The winning blueprint presents.
In the lab room.
Welcome back in the lab room. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me. And it's Monday. And since it's Monday, that means you should be refreshed off of a weekend full of football, as there was games all over the place. And it was a very entertaining weekend, to say the least. A lot of things to get to. A lot of games that were surprises. This weekend was terrible for me. And as much as I would like to say that I came out and I dominated this weekend, I did not. And I could sit here and give you excuses as to why I did not dominate, but I'm not going to do so. All I'm going to do is give you analysis on these games, and then we'll talk about later how I fared and what does this mean moving forward. But before we can move forward, we must first go back to the weekend that was and talk about all these games. So without further ado, let's go Slate Skating.
The weekend.
The weekend that was.
We're slate skating. We're slate skating. We're slate skating. We're slate skating.
Our start through these slate of games lands us in Buffalo, where the Kansas City Chiefs traveled to Buffalo to take on the Bills. And the first thing that I noticed out of the gate in this game is that the Kansas City Chiefs don't look like a good football team. And it's very surprising because they're a very talented football team, especially on the offensive side of the football. And I expected them to go in and challenge Buffalo and ultimately come out with a victory. And they went into Buffalo and they continued the same trend that they had a week ago against Atlanta, which was just giving up touchdowns. There's no resistance from this defense, and that's disappointing from this Romeo Crennel coach team. This is a defensive-minded head coach, someone that last year had this defense playing at a top-notch level, and they can't stop teams from getting in the end zone. And it's not just the defense. The offense isn't producing. And the special teams is giving up plays as well. And in every facet of the game, the Chiefs were dominated in this football game. And they made Buffalo look like a team that has a chance to do something in the AFC East. I don't believe that for 1 second, but this Buffalo Bills team had a nice bounce-back game from that game they had last week against the Jets, where they were just throttled. The Bills came out, established themselves on the ground. C.J. Spiller looks like a starting running back. He looks the part of a starting running back in this league. He came in, and I said that was going to be a key in the game, was to see if C.J. Spiller could handle the load without Fred Jackson. And C.J. Spiller came in, and he dominated in this football game. They could not stop him. They did not have an answer for C.J. Spiller. And before you knew it, you looked up at the scoreboard, and the Chiefs were down 21-0. I mean, this game got out of control in a hurry. And it's funny because the Bills didn't really do anything special, especially on the defensive side of the football. I thought that the Chiefs just shot themselves in the foot with penalties and not the ability to not make plays. They just didn't do anything to keep this Bills offense off of the football field, and they paid for it. This Bills team really didn't get any pass rush. You look at the numbers, and you'll see the Bills probably ended up with 4 or 5 sacks in this game, but it wasn't because of a hot and heavy pass rush. it was just because Matt Castle was holding on to the football way too long and allowing the pass rush to get to him after a while. And so this Bills pass rush that they paid so much money for, it's right now it's not what you would consider an elite pass rush. And for the amount of money they paid for these guys, especially Mario Williams and Mark Anderson, they have to generate more pass rush than they're doing in the first 2 weeks of this NFL season. Also, I thought that Ryan Fitzpatrick was very underwhelming in this game. His numbers didn't wow you. Watching him in the game, he did not wow me at all. And again, it's like a lull that's over him right now where you watch him and there's not a lot there. However, he did everything that the Bills needed him to do in this game. It was more than enough. And he was like 10 of 18, 10 of 19 for about 150, 170 yards passing. Nothing great. He didn't do much. All he did was just move this Bills offense down the field. C.J. Spiller was spectacular, so he didn't need to do much. And I still need to see more from Ryan Fitzpatrick. I'm not sold on him as a quarterback. He has to win me over. He did enough to win in this game, and the Chiefs were just outplayed thoroughly in this game, but it wasn't because of just Ryan Fitzpatrick. The Bills did a lot of things on the offensive end, a lot of things in special teams, a lot of things on the defensive side of the football to win this football game. But nonetheless, he did enough to win this game. But moving forward against better teams, he's going to have to play a lot better than he did on Sunday to help this Bills team win games. Lastly, I thought that the Chiefs just didn't have an answer for the big play ability of these Buffalo Bills. The Bills ran back a punt. The Bills scored touchdowns on long runs by Spiller. They scored a touchdown on a long pass to Stevie Johnson. The Bills made plays in this football game, and the Chiefs just didn't have an answer, whether it was on the offensive, defensive, or on special teams. They didn't have an answer on any side of the football. And that was the difference in the game. The Bills made big plays, and the Chiefs didn't make any. And the Bills separated themselves from the Chiefs early on and established themselves as the better team. And the Chiefs have a lot of work to do. And it is really frustrating because I really like Romeo Crennel, but if the Chiefs are going to continue down this path, you have to wonder, is he the right man for the job? You thought last year after what he did and how he was able to corral this team and get them to play inspired football down the stretch, you thought maybe he was the right man for this job, and you thought maybe this second chance was going to be a charm for him. But right now, this team is coming out and giving lackluster performances, and they have to be better. And it starts with Romeo Crennel. If he can't get them to play better football, he won't be the coach of the Kansas City Chiefs for too much longer. And so the Buffalo Bills dominate the Kansas City Chiefs 35-17, taking their record to 1-1 and dropping the Kansas City Chiefs to 0-2. The next game takes us out to Carolina, where the Carolina Panthers hosted their division rivals, the New Orleans Saints. And I thought this was a big game for both teams. Both teams came into the game 0-1. Both teams could not afford to go 0-2. More so the Panthers than the Saints. And I thought for sure that the Saints, very disappointed in their play in week 1, were going to bounce back and take care of these Carolina Panthers on the road. And initially, it started just as I thought it would. Drew Brees came out efficient, effective, 5 of 5 on his first drive, featuring a lot of Darren Sproles. As they did throughout the course of the day, Sproles ended up having over 10 catches in this game. And they marched right down the field and went in the end zone and went up 7-0. And I thought this is a sign of things to come. But the Panthers buckled down on the defensive side of the football. They got a pick six, a bad pick six from Drew Brees. I don't know what Drew Brees was looking at, what he was trying to accomplish on that play. Thought he forced the ball in and he paid for it. That tied the game up, and I really thought that was the momentum changer that the Panthers needed, and they didn't look back after that pick. And I thought that they took it to the Saints there after that pick. And this Saints team is reeling right now. I didn't think they would miss Sean Payton as much as they do, but it's apparent that him not being there to help them make adjustments, it's obvious that they miss his leadership as the head coach. The Saints are just struggling on the offensive side of the football right now, and they even had opportunities to put more points on the board, but drops killed them, and they squandered opportunities, ended up having to kick field goals, and that's not the New Orleans Saints that we've come to know. This is a team that gets in the end zone. When they have opportunities, they score touchdowns. They don't kick field goals on a consistent basis. And so this team is really struggling right now. And so these Saints have a lot of questions to answer. And they're running out of time in a division that sees the Atlanta Falcons playing solid football. They have a big game coming up tonight against the Broncos. But if they were to win, that would see the Falcons go up 2 games in the division over these Saints, and the Panthers again are no one to laugh at or anyone to turn an eye at. This is a team that has expectations this year, and they're looking to play good football and make themselves a playoff contender. And so, if you're the New Orleans Saints, you have a lot of questions to answer, a lot of soul searching to do, because you have to reach down and find a way to get yourself back into the swing of things, because if you don't find a way soon, this season is going to slip away from you. And so all that adversity that happened over the offseason, it seems like it's beginning to take its toll on these New Orleans Saints. I thought that the Carolina Panthers had a great game plan coming into this game. They featured Cam Newton. They ran the ball. I think they looked at what the Redskins did a week ago, and they went and they mirrored it. And again, these Saints and Panthers play each other twice a season, so the Panthers know exactly what they can and can't do to the Saints. But I thought that they implemented a lot into their game plan of making sure that they took advantage of these Saints on the ground. They really pounded these Saints on the ground. And Cam Newton was a big part of that attack. He spearheaded that attack. And they really took advantage of this Saints defense, who was very porous a week ago and was porous again in week 2. Brandon LaFell had an excellent game. I thought that he was very good in the receiving game. He was all over the field, making plays, extending drives. And I thought that him, Cam Newton, Steve Smith, the running backs, double trouble, of course, being D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart having his first game back from injury, they all looked excellent. This offense was clicking on all cylinders, and the Panthers really had a great game plan, and they executed it to perfection against these Saints. And I think that if you're the Saints, you just got a really bad draw. I mean, I don't know if anyone else in the league can say that they have to do this, because I really haven't looked at the schedule that thoroughly, but you got a draw of Robert Griffin III and Cam Newton in back-to-back weeks. That's a tough draw for anyone. You're dealing with 2 quarterbacks that are dual threats, probably the best dual threats we have in the National Football League, and having to defend these guys back-to-back weeks, it puts a lot of strain and pressure on your defense. And so if you're the Saints, all you can say is we got a bad draw, and we came out and we got dominated on the defensive side of the football by 2 teams who had dual threat quarterbacks that used them to their advantage. And they really took advantage of our defense. And so the Saints really were at a disadvantage in these first 2 weeks against teams who had dual threat quarterbacks that were willing to use them in every facet of their offensive strategies, and they utilized them to the max. And the Saints really suffered because of it. And so the Saints went to Carolina looking to get a victory, did not do so, fell to the Carolina Panthers 35-27. And if you're the Saints, this is the second week in a row that you've given up over 35 points. And so you have to go back to the drawing board and figure out a way to slow down teams on the offensive end. You won't play another scrambling quarterback in this next week. So you can definitely take a second to have a sigh of relief and knowing that you'll actually be playing a quarterback that will be in the pocket. However, you have to still find ways to stop teams on the offensive end. And so your defense has to step up. Drew Brees and his offense needs to settle down, get their wits about themselves, and come back and play New Orleans Saints football. You got to find a way to get a win because this season is slipping away fast. The Panthers win this one 35-27, take their record to 1-1 and get a much-needed victory, drop the New Orleans Saints to a surprising 0-2 to start the season, and they have to find a way to dig themselves out of this early season hole that they've gotten themselves into. So our next game takes us to Cincinnati, where the Bengals hosted their divisional rivals, or one of their divisional rivals, the Cleveland Browns, the in-state rival of two Ohio teams. And the Bengals, I thought, needed to come out and establish themselves as the dominant team in this game. And for the most part, they did that. They never trailed in this game. And I don't think they ever felt like they were in danger of losing this ball game. But still, I saw something from these Cleveland Browns in this game. I thought that they came out and asserted themselves well in this football game. They did a number of things that you have to be impressed with. And if you're a Cleveland Browns fan, you have to be pleased with the progress that your team is making. Again, there's no moral victories in the National Football League, but you have to be pleased with some of the improvements that you've seen from your team from week one, where they could barely put together a drive, more so scoring 27 points. A week ago, you didn't even get in the end zone on the offensive side of the football. Your only touchdown came on defense. So this was a big step in the right direction for the Cleveland Browns. Looking at the Cincinnati Bengals, Pac-Man Jones, or Adam Jones, returned a punt for a touchdown, and he showed he can still do that. I didn't know if that was a part of his game that still exists. He was back there, and he looked good returning punts, broke a few tackles, and got into the open field and made something happen and got in the end zone. Got this game started early for the Bengals, and they never really looked back afterwards. And I thought the Browns made too many mistakes in this game to win, whether it be penalties or allowing guys to run free in the secondary, or just not taking advantage of opportunities that came their way. You can't give up punt returns for touchdowns. You can't allow guys to run free in your secondary, and you can't have the penalties that they had, especially when you're on the road trying to get a win. They just made too many mistakes. And again, the Bengals were the better team, and they needed to come out and establish that, and I thought they did. They jumped on them early and got out to an early lead and really made the Browns have to climb an uphill battle. If you're a Browns fan, you have to be relieved at what you saw from Brandon Weeden and Trent Richardson. Don't get carried away. It's only 1 week, but it's a drastic turnaround from what you saw in week one. After week one, you were questioning whether you got two guys that could get it done in this league. You go to week two, and again, this is a week-to-week league. It's fluid. And so these guys looked excellent this week. Weeden, he showed up. He played good football. He was sound. He had a stellar day. I really was impressed with Weeden, his poise in the pocket. He missed on a few throws that you can't miss on. But again, over time, these things will come. But he also stood in the pocket and made some very impressive throws, staring down the gun barrel in the pocket, knowing he was going to take a hit and making some tough throws. And he took this offense down the field time and time again and put them in positions to score. Trent Richardson was excellent in this game. After having 19 carries for 39 yards, he had those same 19 carries for up over 100 yards this week. And so that was a very positive bounce back game from him. He ran tough and strong. He broke tackles. He caught the ball out of the backfield, made people miss, and got into the end zone twice. And so Trent Richardson is someone that you can rely on and lean on as this season moves along. And so if you're the Browns, you have to feel good about what you saw out of Trent Richardson and Brandon Weeden, hoping that they can carry this team in the future to some victories. All in all, again, before I go, I have to mention Andrew Hawkins, the smallest hybrid receiver running back that these Cincinnati Bengals had. He's a playmaker. I told you he's going to be a scary cover for most teams in this league. When you play the Bengals, you must know where he is at all times on the field. It's hard because you have to contend with A.J. Green, and then you look, and if Hawkins is on the field at the same time, these are two guys where you just need to be able to keep tabs on. He's a playmaker. He made a big play in this game, big catch down the field, made guys miss and got into the end zone. He's dangerous, and if I'm the Bengals, you got to find more ways to get this guy the football. You need to put him on punts, kickoffs, reverses, screens. You got to find ways to get this guy the ball. He's electric with the football in his hand, and he's an asset, definitely a humongous asset to the Cincinnati Bengals. And the Bengals took this one 34-27. This game was not as close as the score indicated. The Browns scored a late game touchdown to cut it to a one-score game. Kicked the onside kick, didn't get it. The Bengals were never really in danger of losing this football game, but the Browns did have an admirable effort, and this was a big step in the right direction again for these Cleveland Browns. But they lose to the Cincinnati Bengals 34-27. The Bengals run their record to 1-1, and these Cleveland Browns drop to 0-2 on the season. When we were doing our previews, I told you that this game was going to be the most evenly matched of the weekend. And that's exactly what it was, as the Minnesota Vikings traveled to Indianapolis to take on the Colts. And I thought that Adrian Peterson and the running game of the Vikings would control the tempo of the game, control the clock, and keep drives alive and put the Vikings in positions to score. I was surprised at how the Colts defense came out and was very aggressive, very dominant, asserted themselves early on, was able to make the Vikings work for everything that they got. And surprisingly, they took a lead early on. And the Vikings scored the first 3 points of the game, and then the Colts ran off the next 10 points. And they really established themselves in this game as a team that was looking to notch their first victory. And they played well at home, and they made it tough on the Vikings. Whatever they were getting, it was tough. It wasn't coming easy to them. I thought that the Colts defense was just way more physical than the Vikings offense early on in this football game. And so they established and set the tempo, and they really came out and took it to the Vikings offense early on in this game, a lot more so than I thought they would be able to. You look at the Vikings, and it's evident that Percy Harvin is an asset and weapon for these Minnesota Vikings. And I thought that, honestly, on Sunday, he was the best player on the football field. He was doing everything for this Vikings offense. He was returning kicks on special teams. He was catching the ball out of the backfield. He was running the ball out of the backfield. They were throwing him screens. He was doing everything. He was Mr. All-Purpose for this Minnesota Vikings team. And so he looked to be the best player on the team. I thought that the Colts had a great scheme this game. And I told you that I thought that their game plan last game, they abandoned it too quick, and they put too much of the onus on Andrew Luck's shoulders. This game, they came out with a game plan of wanting to run the football and limit his attempts, and that's what they need to do. If they're going to win this year, they're not going to win with Andrew Luck throwing the ball 45 times. They're going to win with Andrew Luck throwing the ball less than 30 times, which he did in this game. He had 29 attempts, and running the football. And no, you're not going to be effective running the football every single game. However, you need to make sure you continue to run the ball and keep defenses honest and don't put so much pressure on Andrew Luck to have to make plays in the passing game. And I thought that they did a great job of game planning, giving them, giving the Vikings different looks, putting the ball in the running back's hands, allowing them to make plays, and then going play action fake off of that, which is what is a strength for Andrew Luck, and allowing him to go down the field and make plays. I thought he was excellent in the 2-minute drill again, and I think that Andrew Luck gets it with under 2 minutes in either half. And right before halftime, he took the Colts down the field on a beautiful drive, culminating in about a 30-yard pass, touchdown pass to Reggie Wayne. I just think he's fabulous in the 2-minute drill. It's the second week in a row that he's scored points for his football team before the half, and he gets it with less than 2 minutes in either half, as he showed at the end of the game as well, taking his team down the field and putting them in position for the game-winning field goal. Andrew Luck is a primetime player, and he's going to be a good one in this league. One of the starting 5 this week that really excelled. I thought Weeden played excellent this week. I thought Luck looked great as well this week. And so the starting 5 was a lot better than they were a week ago. And Luck was a big reason why he performed well in this game. His counterpart in this game was Christian Ponder, and I thought he looked excellent as well. These guys both played sound football games, didn't make a lot of mistakes. They took what the defenses were giving them, and I thought Christian Ponder had an excellent game. They started slow on the offensive side of football. They picked it up in the second half, and I thought a big reason why they were able to be better in the second half is because he played a lot better in the second half. He was more comfortable taking what the defense was giving them and completing passes, keeping the sticks moving, staying ahead of the chains, and they got back in this ball game because Christian Ponder and that Vikings offense started to move the ball, started to put points on the board. The only problem was they waited so late in the game to which to do so, and it took a lot out of them to come back. And ultimately, penalties and their slow start did them in this game, as the Colts were able to go down the field, get a game-winning field goal from Adam Vinatieri, and beat the Minnesota Vikings 23-20. And what was a very evenly matched football game. Like I said, I thought it would be one of the most evenly matched games of the weekend, and it was. But the Colts come out on top to run their record to 1-1, getting Andrew Luck and head coach Chuck Pagano their first wins in the National Football League, and running the Vikings record to 1-1 as well, dropping their first one of the 2012 season. Running through these slate of games, we find ourselves next in Jacksonville in another divisional matchup where the Jacksonville Jaguars welcomed their divisional opponent, the Houston Texans, to town. And this was a game that pitted two teams at the opposite ends of the spectrum in the AFC South. The Jacksonville Jaguars being bottom feeders in that division, and the Houston Texans being the dominant team in that division, the champions of the AFC South. And so I figured that the Texans needed to come in, establish themselves as a dominant team, as the team that was going to not only win this game, but win this division. And they needed to make a statement in this game, being their first in the division this season. And I thought they came out and did it just that. They ran the football. They used these running backs in this game exclusively. I mean, Ben Tate and Arian Foster were the focal points of this offense for the duration of the game. They came out, set the tone, ran the football, caught the ball out of the backfield, and the Jacksonville Jaguars got a heavy dose of these two running backs throughout the course of this game. I thought the Jacksonville Jaguars should have taken a page out of the Houston Texans book, because the Texans came out and they featured the short passing game and featured the backs out of the backfield, featured the running backs, running the football. They really picked the Jacksonville Jaguars apart with the short passing game early in this football game, allowing them to get into an offensive flow. I thought the Jacksonville Jaguars did the direct opposite. They ran the ball a little bit early on, but they really tried to push the ball down the field early on, and they incompleted a lot of passes, and they never really got into a flow on offense. They really never got into a rhythm. I thought Blaine Gabbert struggled this game, and I thought he took a step back from the game he had last week, and I thought that was largely in part to the fact that the Jaguars came out trying to push the ball down the field, and he saw the ball hit the ground too many times early in this football game. And if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars with a young quarterback, you want to get them comfortable. You want them to see completions being made early on to kind of relax them and get them into the flow of things. And I thought they didn't do a good job of scheming that up for Blaine Gabbert, making him comfortable in the pocket, making him feel like this offense was moving the football. And so they struggled on offense. And because of this, they were always in 3rd and long. They really were in 3rd and long all game long, and this offense is not built to pick up 3rd and longs on a consistent basis. And so this Jacksonville Jaguars team struggled throughout the whole game. And again, the Texans were the dominant team in this game, and they needed to come out and establish themselves as so, and they did just that. And the Jacksonville Jaguars are not to be confused with an explosive offense. They're not a team that's going to put up 30 points. And so if this game got anywhere close to 30, you knew the Jacksonville Jaguars were going to have a tough time winning this ball game. And the Texans scored 27 points. And so you knew the Jacksonville Jaguars were going to have an uphill battle to climb. They only scored 7. The Texans came out, established themselves as the better football team. They won the game 27-7. Running their record to 2-0, dropping the Jacksonville Jaguars to 0-2. So as we continue down this slate of Sunday games, we find ourselves in the hot sun and the humidity of Miami, where the Dolphins were waiting on the Oakland Raiders. And this game was probably the least anticipated of the weekend, because this was a game between two teams that have absolutely zero chance of making the playoffs this year. And so this game was a matchup between teams trying to find themselves, trying to establish themselves as teams who can win ball games in the National Football League. And so the Dolphins came out early on, and I thought that the Raiders were getting pressure on Ryan Tannehill, and they were making it hard for this Dolphins offense to move the ball down the field. And I thought the Raiders picked up on defense right where they left off at early on in this ball game. They were stopping the run. They were getting after Tannehill, putting pressure on him, forcing him into quick decisions with the football. And I thought that the Raiders were doing everything that they needed to do early in this football game to find a way to win. Now the Dolphins struck first blood in this game, getting in the end zone on a Tannehill, essentially a scramble out to the left and running it into the end zone himself, getting the Dolphins on the board to start this game out. But the Raiders responded with a pass to Mike Goodson out of the backfield, 64-yard touchdown pass to tie it up at 7. And I thought, if the Raiders can just keep this thing close, they can find a way to win this game, because I thought that on defense they were the better football team and they were going to force Tannehill into mistakes. But too many injuries and not enough depth when you're a new football team trying to play a new scheme and trying to implement what you want to do on the defensive side of the football, as the Raiders are with new head coach Dennis Allen. You're going to not have all the pieces that you want, and they don't have any depth anywhere on that football team. And so any kind of injuries that you incur is going to make it that much harder for you to produce on the football field. And the Raiders have a few injuries starting to pile up on the defensive side of football, and it showed. They started to wear down, and by the time the second half came, the Dolphins exploded on offense, and mainly Reggie Bush in that running game. And Reggie Bush went off on these Oakland Raiders in the second half, and they didn't have an answer for Reggie Bush. And as he went, this Dolphins offense started to go. And Tannehill started to get more comfortable. He started to show why he was a first-round selection. He started to show why the Dolphins think that he's the quarterback of the future. And they started to put points on the scoreboard. And the Raiders didn't have an answer because this is a team that's going to score points in bunches this season. And so they can't afford to give up points. And that's what they did in the second half. And I thought that the Raiders were thoroughly outplayed soundly in the second half of this game. And it's evident that the Raiders can't push the ball down the field. They couldn't do it last week. They couldn't do it again this week. And they struggled because of it. McFadden looks like a shell of himself. Again, people are starting to say that he can't run in the zone blocking scheme. I think he's more of a power running back. He needs to be going straight, north and south and not east and west. And you say what you want about HOU Jackson and everything that was going on in Oakland the last 2 seasons. He had Darren McFadden looking like an elite running back in this league. And whatever he was doing on the offensive side of the football was working for Darren McFadden and the Oakland Raiders. They were scoring points. They were running the football on teams, and they were effective on the offensive side of the football. This team right now, as it stands in Oakland, on the offensive side of the ball, looks like one of the worst teams in all of football. They're not getting it done. They don't scare you on the offensive side of the football. They can't push the ball down the field. They have a lot of work to do. And it's not surprising because when you have a new head coach and they're trying to implement their scheme and the things that they want to do, you're going to have growing pains. But the Dolphins are in the same boat as the Raiders. New head coach, new philosophy, new way of doing things, and they were able to execute. The Raiders were not. And so behind a solid second career start from Ryan Tannehill and an outburst from Brian Hartline. The Raiders had Brian Hartline problems. He was borderline dominant in this game at the wide receiver position. He was carving up that Raiders secondary. Behind the performance of Reggie Bush, Brian Hartline, and a solid start from Ryan Tannehill, the Raiders were disposed of by the Miami Dolphins, 35-13, taking their record to 1-1 on the season. Tannehill getting his first career victory as a starting NFL quarterback, and head coach Joe Philbin getting his first win as a head coach in the National Football League. And the Raiders have a lot of work to do. This Dolphins team was not a team that was supposed to be able to rack up 35 points on you and dispose of you so easily. And the Dolphins are one of the worst teams in the league, or one of the bottom tier teams in the league. And they were able to dispose of you very easily. So if you're the Raiders, that's a cause for concern. And you're going to be hard-pressed to find a victory on your schedule if you can't at least be competitive against teams like the Dolphins. So we're going to see what this season is going to shape up like for these Oakland Raiders. Our biggest surprise of the weekend came in New England, where the Arizona Cardinals traveled to New England to take on the Patriots. And no one saw this one coming. I don't care who you are. I don't even care if you're an Arizona Cardinals fan. No one saw this one coming. The Cardinals went into New England and played inspired football. I thought that they came out in this game and they played some really good defense. I mean, they were really good on the defensive side of the football. They matched the Patriots' intensity on the defensive side of the football and really put intense pressure on Tom Brady throughout the course of this football game. Really made it hard for Brady to get into a rhythm. And I thought that was the key in this game. If you're the Cardinals, I've said this many times, you have to find ways to get Patrick Peterson the football. He's electric. They took my advice. They actually put him in the Wildcat this game and gave him a carry, and he got 17 yards on it. I mean, he's electric every time he touches the football. They got to find ways on the offensive side. But I don't care if you throw him a screen, wide receiver screen, or you send him on a 9-route. You just got to get the ball in this guy's hands. He's so dynamic when he has the football in his hands. He also made an excellent play on a tip pass that resulted in an interception, where he caught the interception with one hand and stuck it to his helmet. And it's just an excellent play. He's such an athlete, and he's such a playmaker. They have to find ways to utilize Patrick Peterson other than just punts and on defense. You look at the Patriots, and they lost Aaron Hernandez, one half of the Diamond Duo early on in this game with the ankle injury. And so his presence was definitely missed, as they really could not get into an offensive rhythm throughout the course of this football game. I also noticed that Stephen Ridley is going to be an effective runner for these Patriots. He runs hard. He gets yards that are there and then some. And so that's going to be a good find for the Patriots moving forward. Also, looking at the Patriots, they had a meltdown on special teams. I thought this was a big play in the game, allowing the Cardinals to block a punt. And these Cardinals did everything that you need to do on the road against a tough opponent to win a football game. And they came out and they really looked to take it to these Patriots. And I thought that Kevin Kolb came out and was very inaccurate early on in this football game. But the thing that he did not do that he normally does is make the big mistake, make the blunder that changes the complexion of the ball game. Although he was inaccurate early on, he did not make the glaring mistake that cost his team points or cost his team the game. And so from that standpoint, Kevin Kolb gets a kudos from me for not making that mistake and for being poised and taking his team down the field and allowing them to put points on the board, whether it's a touchdown or a field goal. Against teams like the Patriots, you just need to make sure you get points. And he did a good job of making sure that when his team was in scoring position, he did not mess that up. They got points on the board, and so they put themselves in a prime position to beat these Patriots. Later on in the game, the Patriots started to find their way to realize that, look, we're in danger of losing our first ever home opener at Gillette Stadium. We have to get it together and get on the ball and find a way to win this game. And they tried feverishly to do so. They made a charge at the end of this game, and they almost was able to complete the comeback with a Danny Woodhead late game touchdown, but it was negated by a holding penalty by Rob Gronkowski, and I thought this was a questionable call at best. I did not think that this warranted a holding penalty. At this stage in the game, you have to be sure if you're going to call something of that magnitude that can change the game, and I thought this was a bad call. And ultimately, this call, in conjunction with the Patriots' inability to continue to keep their foot on the pedal and force the issue, were the reasons they lost this football game. If you're the Patriots, I know Stephen Gostkowski has been a solid kicker throughout his career and even this season for you, having not missed up until the end of this game. But you have to get closer than a 42-yard field goal. I don't know what possessed the Patriots to feel comfortable enough to shut it down with about 40 seconds left in this game. Plenty of time for the Patriots to run 2 or 3 more plays, get way, way more closer in field goal range. Make this a comfortable field goal for Gostkowski. This field goal should have been 27 yards. This field goal should have been 37 yards. Instead, the Patriots decided that they were going to take knees and set him up with about 40 seconds left from 42 yards out. And I thought that was a mistake. That was too far with that much time. You have opportunities. If you gain only 8 more yards, we're looking at a 34-yard field goal, which is much easier than a 42-yard field goal. And the wind was blowing in Gillette Stadium that day, so it was a tough day for kickers to kick the football. I thought the Patriots did Gostkowski a disservice by stopping essentially their offense and halting play and deciding that they were going to kick a field goal from that far out with that much time left. Ultimately, that decision, coupled with the fact that Gostkowski just absolutely flat out missed the kick, it wasn't even close, proved to be the difference in this game. And the Cardinals, in a surprising shocker, go to New England, to Foxborough, and win 20-18 against the New England Patriots in the Patriots home opener. The first time they lose a home opener in that stadium's history. And if you're the Cardinals, you have to feel great about yourself being able to start the season 2-0, go on the road, get a big win in New England, and you're looking like a player in that NFC West division. And so good for those Arizona Cardinals. You flip side, you look at the Patriots, and I told you last week I was not impressed with the Patriots throughout the preseason, and they came in and looked dominant on defense. But this offense still had a ways to go, even against the Titans when they put up 30 points. Their defense did a lot of the heavy lifting in that game. I thought that this offense still was behind the defense, and that was the case in this game. This offense was not clicking. The defense was keeping the Patriots in this game, and the Patriots have questions to answer, much like a lot of these teams in the league right now. There really aren't any dominant teams right now that are going out and exerting their dominance over teams except for the San Francisco 49ers. The Patriots have questions to answer, and right now they're having to try to answer them and make adjustments with a loss. And so we're going to see how this New England Patriots team responds to dropping their first game on the season, going to 1-1, and the Cardinals notching their second straight victory to open the season, going to 2-0. If that game was the most surprising of the weekend, this was the most thrilling game of the weekend. And this game saw the Tampa Bay Buccaneers traveling to New Jersey to take on the New York Giants. And I tell you what, this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team should be kicking themselves right now. They should be 2-0 on the season. They came out and they played a heck of a ball game for 3 quarters. I thought early on in this football game, Vincent Jackson looked to be a guy that was... I thought early on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive line was providing plenty of time for Josh Freeman, and he was using that time that he was getting to look for Vincent Jackson. And these guys were completing passes, and they were on the money. They were in sync, and they looked like throughout the course of this season, Vincent Jackson is going to be a huge pickup for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's starting to look like a security blanket for Josh Freeman. He's looking for him, and he knows that Vincent Jackson with that big 6'5" frame can go up and make plays for him. And so he's not going to hesitate to just throw the football up and allow Vincent Jackson to go make a play for him. And right now they're making they're making beautiful music together. And so early on, I thought that the Buccaneers came out and established themselves on offense as a team that was going to look to make plays. And I thought that they really came out and took it to this Giants offense early on. They forced a number of turnovers from Eli Manning, 3 to be exact, early on in that second quarter. And by the halftime, Eli Manning had already thrown 3 interceptions, and one was taken to the house, another was taken down inside the 5. And so the Buccaneers were taking their defense and creating offense off of it. And they looked to be a team that was trying to go out on the road and shock a lot of people, and myself included. They looked like a team that was on a mission, that was going to go out and just throttle these Giants at home. They jumped out to a nice early lead, and the Giants were reeling. They were in trouble. At one point in this game, they were down 24-6. It was not looking good for the Giants. But this game, this NFL game that we love so much, is a 4 quarters game. It is 60 minutes of football. You can't take a half off. You can't take a quarter off. You can't take a snap off. And I thought the Bucs were dominant. They were impressive on the defensive side of football in the first half. They were flying all over the field. They injured Ahmad Bradshaw. He had to leave the game. His replacement, Andre Brown, came in. And I thought that he did an admirable job filling in for Ahmad Bradshaw. I thought he really showed well in his first appearance with the Giants. And I thought that Victor Cruz and Hakeem Nicks looked like the tandem that they were last year. I thought they were dominant in this football game, and they really propelled the Giants on that comeback trail in the second half. And I thought the Tampa Bay Buccaneers started to relax. They showed their youth as a young team. They started to relax and take their foot off of the pedal as they got that lead, and I think they felt like they had a grasp on this game. And the Giants were reeling, like I said, and I think they really had the opportunity to put them away, but they couldn't do so. And they allowed the Giants to get confidence and start to score points. And once you allow a team like the Giants, who can be explosive on the offensive end, to start scoring points, it's hard to turn that faucet off. Once that faucet is on and the points start coming down, it's hard to turn that faucet off, and the Bucs found this out the hard way. And they allowed the Giants to score, 24 points in that fourth quarter, and that the points just started coming out of that faucet, and they couldn't shut it off. And once you get a barrage like that, it's hard for you as a football team to respond, because it takes a lot out of you mentally to see a team just going up and down the football field and scoring points. And I thought that Josh Freeman did his best to keep the Bucs in the game. He came back after they, suffered their first deficit of the game. The Giants went up 34-27. He took the team right back down the field, threw it up to Mike Williams, and boom, the game was tied just like that. And he gave his team a chance to get back into this game and possibly, send it to overtime, or even get the ball back if the defense could find a way to get a stop, get the ball back and win the game in regulation. But it wasn't meant to be. This defense, again, once that faucet was turned on and the Giants offense just started rolling and points started coming down, they couldn't stop it. They couldn't turn the faucet off. And so that Giants offense got back on the field and marched right back down the field and got right back in the end zone and got to 41. And that Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense, they thought they had one more spark in them. They went down the field, but Mike Williams wasn't able to hold on to a pass that would have put them in a prime position to take at least one, maybe two shots at the end zone. Instead, their attempt fell short, and they lost this game 41-34 in a very exciting and thrilling game that saw two teams combine for 75 points in a game that I really didn't see this score getting out of the 20s, let alone almost both teams scoring in the 40s. This was a very entertaining game, one that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers let slip through their fingers, and they'll be kicking themselves for the next 48 hours because they let one get away that they should have been able to get on the road. They worked too hard and played too well for the first three quarters of this game to allow the Giants to not only come back, but come back in such an emphatic way and take this game from them. If you're the Buccaneers, you have to feel good about what you've accomplished in these first two games. And you've really established yourself as a team that can make some noise in that NFC South division, and a team that, if other teams around the league aren't careful, you could sneak up and find yourself sniffing around a wild card spot when it's all said and done. Again, it's early, and head coach Greg Schiano is a young, new head coach in the National Football League, and so this could be some early season newness that a lot of teams around the league don't know what to expect from this team. As more film is developed on them as they play more games, teams will make adjustments and they'll start to be exposed. We don't know. But right now, the Buccaneers look solid as a football team. You look at the Giants, This is a team who won the Super Bowl last year, defending Super Bowl champions. I don't have them making the playoffs this year. And it's games like these that make me wonder if the Giants, in fact, will make the playoffs. Again, the Giants showed in that second half that they have the ability to score and play with anyone in this league. When they get hot, they are dangerous. They have two of the best receivers in all of football when paired together as a tandem. I don't know if there's any tandem better in the league than Hakeem Nicks and Victor Cruz when they're on their games. They combine for 21 catches for close to over 300 yards in this game. And so they were in midseason form, and they were a huge reason why the Giants were able to come back and notch this victory against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Both of these teams now own 1-1 records. The Bucs dropping to 1-1, the Giants going up to 1-1, and now both of these teams look to try and build off of their starts to this season. The Giants probably a little more disappointed in their 1-1 start, more so than the Bucs being maybe disappointed with their 1-1 start, being that they could have been 2-0, but still happy nonetheless that they were able to get a win early in this season and look to build upon the things that they've done early in this season.